Hi, this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and I'll be continuing my coverage of this year's Amber 2011 Rapid and Blindfold Super Tournament. And so we've got Anish Giri from the Netherlands, a young rising prodigy, against another rising prodigy, Levon Aronian of Armenia. And Aronion went on to win this event. This is round 1. It's a rapid game, and the time control is 25 minutes with a 10-second increment. And Levon Aronian, he went on to win the tournament with an astounding score. And so this was kind of at the beginning when he was just heating up. Giri had somewhat of a disappointing tournament, but he's definitely on the rise, and I'm sure he'll be back playing with the top guns soon. So Aronian played a Dutch, which is somewhat of a surprise. I can't specifically recall him playing very much in the past, but he is a very dynamic player and very versatile, so not too much of a surprise there. Giri attempts to play a pretty solid system, fianchettoing, allowing black to play the Dutch kind of how he wants. And the only other top player I can really think of who plays the Dutch and who plays it well and is not scared to bust it out, and I think he might have played it in this tournament, is actually in Amber 2011, is Hikaru Nakamura of the US. So not seen too frequently at high level play, but apparently it is definitely playable. And the idea is, it's pretty well demonstrated in this game, is that black achieves something of it's very double-edged. It's very just usually strange positions like the one in front of us right now. So it seems like it's very tough to play, and the positions don't intuitively feel all of that sound, but the burden is on white to prove that. And so here black doubles, yes, these pawns are doubled in the middle, but they're also a mobile pawn center, and thus, reinforcing the dynamism of the opening. And so c5 here, so white immediately sees an opportunity to put the queen on b3, and the a2 to g8 diagonal is definitely a good place. So black anticipates that and just goes ahead and moves his king. So a personal choice here, could have transposed and played king to h7, but as f4 might be in mind later, king to h8 is a little safer, especially as a white knight can't come to h4 to harass the king. And so the game is starting to shape up, and possibly e4 is an idea here, but there's a very common pawn sacrifice, if e4 is played. Just guessing f4, and it's always very dangerous to take this pawn, and black usually gets pretty good compensation. The attacking side usually gets pretty good compensation in these types of positions. Just I don't know, I'm not altogether convinced in this position, but maybe as g5 can be played, controlling that f4 square is certainly worth the pawn, and this e4 pawn inhibits the bishop. So anyway, going back to the game, rook d1, common sense, very logical, makes plenty of sense. And g5, so white is going to be playing actively in the center. Possibly he's angling for a d6, or even less likely a c6. So I think he wants to play d6 to bust open the center and take advantage of his he's got just a slight spatial advantage here, more fluid development, and possibly black's going to have a problem developing that bishop on c8. So bishop d2, and it seems this is where Giri maybe he gets a little confused. The first move I would consider as white here is, f4 is coming, right? Possibly e4 and f4. And maybe, the h-pawn's going to march later too. So the first move to impede that is to play f4. f4 himself is white. But it's tough to recommend possibly this is the outcome here. And this open g-file, as black's king is already off it, this would seem to favor white or if to favor black, as black's knight can hop to g4. There's all kinds of nasty tactics. Maybe the queen's coming to h4, no dice. So bishop d2 seems awfully passive, and it seems like a concession maybe that white's plan is not looking so great in the face of black's, you know, massive kingside pawns. And a6, an interesting move, but it makes sense. It makes sense on a weird level because it's kind of a prophylactic move. But if, you know, black doesn't really want to play e4 here, because that's going to make it tougher for him to play f4. He also could immediately play f4, but there's no real point because this will free up the e4 square for white's pieces. Possibly a bishop e1, and then knight e4. Something along those lines. Bishop e1. Then the knight's going to come to e4 and queen c4. So black doesn't want to commit himself too early to playing e4 or f4 because it's going to open up squares for white. So a little bit of patience goes a long way. And a6, obviously d6 would seem to be white's only source of real counterplay as far as opening the position. It's not going to come in the kingside area. So d6. So maybe Aronian was thinking, okay, let's I'll play a6. I'll stop the white knight from coming to knight b5 and see what white does. So bishop e1. Queen e8 makes sense. He wants to put this queen, helping on the light squares. Queen g6 would certainly help, make f4 a possibility, exerting more pressure on the center. And so this bishop looks kind of weird on e1. It certainly does. And now white but the bishop is out of the way, and also sometimes protecting f2 in some of these lines. So now after d6, tactics are beginning to run. The position is starting to open up, and possibly black is threatening b7, although unlikely due to rook b8 and pinning. But d6, I mean, that's really what's going on, is white wants to break open the center, and if he succeeds, if black takes here, which seems like a very normal move, rook takes, and all of a sudden black is not entirely comfortable. Seems like an okay position, doesn't seem that bad. However, a6 is a serious weakness here, and it doesn't appear at first glance, but it is. So maybe if e4, there could be rook d1. There could also be knight a4 to try to penetrate that b6 square, which has been fatally weakened by the advance of a6. So those little pawn moves, you can't take them back, and they can have a big influence on the game. Also important to note, bishop e6 is simply not possible in this position with the dominant rook at d6. So going back, Aronian played, he's sneaky, he's a very versatile player, and he's not scared to take risks. He plays c6. And now a6 looks kind of like a silly move, actually, because it didn't really end up doing anything. But maybe I missed something there, I don't know. So c6, and now knight a4 is the logical move. Want to stick this knight on the b6, and maybe this bishop can come to life. And e4. And Aronian is a very creative player, and this game is no exception. f4, so I mean the pawns are rolling. And even better, the queen and the rook are behind him. And it seems like black's position is going well, but white has a pass pawn on d6, and Aronian has a creative solution to what to do about that. He just sacks a piece. So instead of worrying about the pass pawn, he just took those 2 or 3 tempo that white is taking to win it, and he gets a very dangerous attack on white's dark squares specifically. So bishop takes, removing the defender, rook takes, and now d7, winning the piece, but at a very high cost of weakening his king. when I first saw the sacrifice, I thought Aronion must be crazy, but he's got a very, very deep intuitive sense of the position and when to sacrifice and when it's justified. And in this position, I thought maybe he went a little overboard, because it seems it just felt to me that white can hold this, but it turns out being much more difficult, and the presence of opposite colored bishops should be recognized in that, and that it's always easier to attack when you have opposite colored bishops. Even though white has an extra knight on the board, there's nothing to really defend or oppose black's dark square bishop. So continuing e2, this is looking messy around white's king. Rook e3, and now rook b8 is, I guess, an interesting waiting move. I thought Aronian had about 15 minutes here, but he didn't want to commit himself too much with f takes g3. Rook b8, safe move, rook d7, and now f takes g3. And black has certainly got compensation, and queen h5, a nice move. I suppose, other than the obvious threats coming on e2, that with rook b e8 and possibly the queen coming to h2, threatening queen g1, something along those lines had to be the idea. Queen h5, a good move. Much better than rook takes g3. So queen h5, and now king takes f2. White was unable to stay on the pawn there, and it seems like white is defended, and black has one pawn for the piece, which is not going to be enough. But this pin on the king and the queen being so close, and I believe another pin is introduced soon, make it very difficult for white to defend. And after rook e6, and now it seems like white's not going to have any problem defending, but h5 and rook f6. And so now this rook f3 is forced here, and after takes, pawn takes, bishop d4 check, and that's not going to work in white's favor. So here king takes is forced, and the king's going to take a little walk, and he's going to drop a few pieces along the way. Giri has 2 minutes here, Aronian 5. And I believe now the game is just over after rook h1. Tough to offer any advice. Possibly rook d1, although maybe that... No, rook d1 maybe. Although that would just walk into a mate. So in this position, it's possibly already lost. Queen f2 and check, and here Giri resigned. He's just down a rook, and he doesn't even have any checks. So a fantastic game played by Aronian, not scared at all to sacrifice, and I mean, what can you say? Giri played well, but Aronian's sense of the initiative and his intuition was just, he played like an absolute monster in this tournament. So a great game played by Aronian, and congratulations on his victory overall in the tournament in Amber 2011. And this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.